And Keith Wallahan is a former barrister and army veteran who is now the Liberal MP for Menzies in Victoria. To get us started tonight, here's a question from Oliver Wilde. Hi, Oliver.
Hi, Patricia. I'm 16 years old. I can pay tax, I can work full-time, I can enlist in the army, I can drive a car and can be held criminally responsible for a crime. But I can't vote. If politicians are wondering why democracy is in a crisis and political disillusionment is at an all-time high, it's because globally, people don't feel represented. Is making the voting age 16 the pathway forward to strengthening our democracy?
Well, can I just say, Oliver, here you are as a 16-year-old putting your case on live TV, so well done to you. One of the great honours I have as a member of the House of Representatives is visiting schools, or they come and visit us in Parliament. And there's usually two questions that get asked, especially primary schools. They say, what was it like working at McDonald's? Because their teachers tell them I worked there. And the other is...
So did Kamala Harris.
She did.
It's the thing
yes,
now.
It is a very, very important part of her background. But they also say, why are you doing this? And I think that's one of the most important questions that gets asked. And what I tell them is that there are 113,000 voters in my electorate, but there are 170,000 people. And my job, and the job of every member of the House of Representatives, is to represent everyone. And that includes a huge number of children. I think we have to draw a line in the sand at some number. I think 18 is about right. I would be worried that you would see political parties going into schools for tactical political reasons.
Would you be tempted to?
Well,
is that what you're saying?
Well, I think all political parties would, and I don't think that would be fair on schools or students. The time comes. There is a time, and 18 makes sense, and it's consistent with many democracies around the world.
Next, we're going to hear from Jenny Carroll. Hi, Jenny.
Hi. My children, now almost 30 and 34, went to the local state public school and were dictated to that multiculturalism is a great thing. I don't believe it is, as I feel that the culture of the original British/Irish majority has been demonised constantly for the last 3 decades. Case in point, frequent vandalism of memorials to Captain Cook. How does democracy fit into this atmosphere of beat up the white guy?
Keith Wallahan, is there kind of a culture of beating up on the white guy, which is part of that question?
I don't think it is based on race, but I think often there is a tension between acknowledging and cherishing our multicultural background and this disdain for a healthy patriotism as opposed to nationalism. And by a healthy patriotism, we mean a love of this country that we all share. And that's a unifying moment. And it's also about gratitude for where we are. And for me, after visiting schools, citizenship ceremonies are one of the best parts of this job. And there you see people in their national dress from all around the world. And then they hold the Australian flag and they sing the national anthem with tears, many tears running down their face. And then when you see in the Defence Force people from all faith backgrounds, all cultural backgrounds, they have that one flag being Australian. So I think we need to find a way that it's not either or. We are a proud multicultural nation with a proud Indigenous heritage. But there is something that binds us all together as Australians, and that's never in conflict with being a multicultural nation.
Now I'd like to bring in Rohan Hora. Hi, Rohan.
Hi. Kamala Harris has just become the first Asian American and African American woman to lead a presidential ticket in US political history. And for me, as an Indian person, this is a massive milestone. What do you think is the significance of being able to see yourself in political leaders?
Well, as members of the Parliament and is in the same position, we respect the decision is the American people's to make, and whoever they elect, as Australian representatives, we would like to work with that administration. But to your point, I was born in Ireland, and I remember many houses would have 2 pictures above the good room. They had a picture of the Pope and they had a picture of John F. Kennedy. And so for many Irish people, when they saw an Irish background Catholic become the most powerful person in the world, it meant a lot. And I think many people saw that with Rishi Sunak in the United Kingdom, and we saw it with Barack Obama as well. These things do matter. But what I would say is, if you're interested in politics and whatever side or crossbench you're interested in, I'm comforted by, in my party certainly, the diversity of the people who are joining, who are young, from all backgrounds, because there's no barrier to entry, and nor should there be in politics.
Let's keep the conversation going tonight with a question from Andrew Tran. Hi, Andrew.
Hi, PK. Hi, panel. With the right to disconnect laws that start today, does it reveal a deeper crisis in workplace cultures? I mean, if we need a law to enforce personal boundaries, are we failing to balance productivity and employee well-being? And do we need a radical rethink of this idea of kind of work-life balance?
That's for you.
I think with a lot of these well-meaning ideas, and people having a work-life balance is a well-meaning idea that we all share, all reasonable people cherish. But it's about who defines and who decides. So that has come in today for businesses that have 15 or more employees. And it's also come in at a time when there's changes to the definitions of casual employment, at a time when we have had 5 quarters of per capita drop in growth. That's a GDP per capita recession. And one of the key areas to lift productivity is in our labour laws. And key to that is allowing people to treat each other as adults. So at the moment, there are many businesses that are confused as to how this will work. They're confused as to what the guidelines are. And in the end, the definition of reasonable, it's one of the most litigated words in the courts, because when you push that out of the employer-employee relationship and into the courts, you're bringing uncertainty into a key part of the economy. So I am worried about what that means for productivity when we need it to improve more than ever.
Next, we'll hear from Annette Gorey. Annette.
The world is filled with cries and demands to free Palestine. But with Iran the key player in the region and supplying arms to Hamas and its many proxies, and seemingly directing the multi-pronged attacks on Israel, if the goal of eliminating Israel is achieved, will Palestine really be free? Or will it just be another Iranian outpost? And where to next for Iran?
Keith, there has been a debate in the parliament, though, about that. I do feel for some of the Gazans who probably hate Hamas but can't say it right. Do you feel for those people? I mean, a lot of them have come to Australia.
Oh, of course I do.
I've spoken to one of them. It says, I have no sympathy for Hamas.
You wouldn't be human if you didn't have that sympathy for them in that predicament. But to the substance of the question about Iran, I think it's important to address that. There isn't a conflict of consequence in that region that doesn't have the IRGC's fingerprints on it. And, of course, we have Hamas listed as a terrorist organisation, but I think it's important that we look at the IRGC being listed as a terrorist organisation, not just because of the instability in the region, but because of how they treat their own people. And we saw that in the Women Life Freedom movement and the protests that occurred here. It's a destabilising force. And I think when we step up and zoom out of this conflict, we need to turn our attention to the role of Iran in not just destabilising that region, but the entire world.
Now we have a question from Denise Lofts.
As you know, Michelle Obama's speech highlighted the sense of hope, hard work for the common good. Also a hope that not just of victory, but of vanquishing the demons of fear, division and hate that have consumed us. Have Australians lost their sense of hope in politics, therefore hope in democracy, particularly in our young people?
This is my first term of Parliament. We never know. It might be my only term. That's up to the people of Menzies. But before we went to air, Anne Ali said, "Good luck, Keith." And I said, "You too." And there's a lot of that in politics that people don't see. I'm doing a course at the moment that's run by the McKinnon Institute, and the head of that is Rod Glover, who is married to Peter Murphy. Peter Murphy sadly passed away, but she influenced my life and how I view myself as a parliamentarian. And Rod said something recently that stuck with me. He said, your task is to build a reservoir of trust in an infinite game. And it stuck with me because in an infinite game, we will come and go, but the Parliament will be there, Australia will be there, and we need to go to sleep every night saying that I did my best that day, that week, and left the place a bit better than I found it. And I think the way you do that is that you put principle over power wherever you can. And that usually clashes with self-interest. And if you put the people before you, I think you're on the right track. So I hope I live up to Rod and Peter's advice in that regard.
Well, let's talk. Well, one of the things that they want is a full ban on gambling advertising. Is that something you still believe?
It is. I signed the Murphy report, and I did that proudly. But in politics, you've got to bring people with you. And so I'm a proud member of my party, and you've got to bring people with you. And
You're trying to bring them with you still because they're not for a full ban.
Oh, we'll wait and see. So at the moment, it's for the government to produce a bill, and we'll scrutinise that. But I do respect my colleagues and their different views on that.
OK, and when you said Peter Murphy had a huge influence on you, how so?
She was a courageous leader, and I was on 2 committees with her, one where we agreed on gambling reform and another where we didn't on The Voice. And what I noted in that, we had different views, but we fundamentally respected each other's position, and we would have fierce debates, but then we would go and enjoy each other's company afterwards. And again, I think the more we do that in politics, the better we'll be as a nation. OK,
our next question comes from Tim Bennett. Hi, Tim.
Is there an increasing threat to democracy from foreign hackers? And if so, how can we defend against them?
I agree, and it gives me comfort that the Australian Electoral Commission, A, is there, B, is independent, and C, is looking at this. They don't take that for granted, and certainly it's a task force that they have at the moment, and they should treat it seriously, because through our technology apps you can have anyone reach in and try and influence an election, and we must all work together to prevent that.